No one can interrupt my groove today. Been watching gray skies move away. I just don't think that I can lose, and I might just take a cruise and let the sunshine play. Something more, something new, something new.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Approach Podcast. As you can tell, Rob is not here with us this evening, but that gives me the privilege and opportunity to welcome in my good friend Jason. Jason, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Good, buddy. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Super excited to talk about this week, kind of breakdown last week. For those of you that don't know or follow Jason, Jason has his Fairway to Heaven podcast that he does, which is fantastic. And something that you've kind of recently been doing, I don't want to say extremely recent, but is, what you're doing as far as doing the course preview for FanShare Sports, which is fantastic. If you haven't checked it out, it's one of the best ways to kind of get the week started, kind of figure out what kind of tests we're heading into. So those are great things. Anything else that you got going on that you want the people to know about?
No, those are the two big things. Like you said, course preview usually comes out on Sunday morning. Kind of just a rundown of the basic things about the course, a little strategy that I like to get into a little bit. I kind of like doing it too because it kind of gives me a kickstart to my research for the week. Like, I'm researching the course anyway, which is great, but I also start to think strategy even before the pricing comes out. So I like doing that. Like you mentioned, Fairway to Heaven, Tuesday nights at 9:00. You've been a guest on there a few times. We love having you on there too. It's fun. It's a good time.
Yeah, no, I've had the privilege of being able to go on there a few times with you guys, and we've had a great time, and it's always a good laugh, good information. So if you haven't already, check that out on Tuesday nights. But hey, man, let's just get right into it. I want to, before we gloss over last week, let's kind of talk about the week that was. I mean, an absolute crazy atmosphere, party, the waste management, out at TPC Scottsdale. Every year, I feel like it just kind of gets ramped up more and more and more. This year, we had the best field that we've seen at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. What are your takeaways? Do you like that golf course? Do you like the kind of ruckus atmosphere? It's a little different, not the norm, certainly, at the PGA level.
It's definitely one of those things that I think you guys talked about a little bit last week, that you like it when it happens once a year, but you don't want to do it all the time. Like, I feel like it would be too much if it was all the time. It's like going to Vegas. Like, it's so much fun when you go there, but then when you get home, you're happy that you're home. Like, it's like one of those things. I feel like, I don't know, it's obviously a great scene. It's a fun tournament. When Sam Ryder hit that ace, I think it was Saturday, and the crowd was just going nuts, and the green was littered with beer cans and beer bottles and everything. That was pretty funny. But yeah, it's an awesome tournament. I don't know, if you're a golfer, I don't know how you wouldn't want to play in that tournament. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. No, you're right. Like, it's just so different, right? And like, for me, it's kind of a bucket list golf tournament to go to. And I know I put something out on Twitter that I got killed for, saying that maybe the beer can throwing onto the green was a bit much. Even my dad told me that I was acting like an old man. But no, it's just wild. Like, and I think that, and I think they had almost 700,000 people on the grounds this week. And the cool thing to me is just the way that it's set up and the way that it finishes is nonstop craziness, right? You go into 16, then you have the 17th, which is drivable, and it's just loud, and it's a cool atmosphere. And I think that for a PGA player, to your point, yeah, maybe that's not the norm that you want on a week-to-week basis. But I also do think it's cool that golf gets kind of out of its own way to an extent, and it doesn't make it like, it's not snobby, it's not stuffy like we see during a normal week. It's not, hey, don't talk in my backswing, right? And I think that some of that stuff kind of deters a lot of people from the sport in general. So to kind of see that laid back atmosphere, to your point, the ace on Saturday, and then there was one on Sunday as well, I think by Emiliano Grillo. It's just really cool. But just to kind of talk real quick about the results of the tournament itself, having Thigala there and just kind of how cool and collected he was, and really just a kind of a star-studded leaderboard, as we made the turn on Sunday. Any kind of takeaways from what you saw, coming down the stretch and kind of Sunday in general?
It kind of was what we thought it was going to be. It was kind of like one of those events where you saw, like you said, the strongest field at that tournament ever. And I mean, the leaderboard was just peppered with studs. I mean, you had Xander and Brooks and obviously Scotty. And Tagala was, I mean, he was right in the mix there too. I mean, he didn't shy away at all. And we were kind of talking a little bit before we got on here about just how good of hands golf is in. I mean, it just seems like every year we're like, oh my gosh, these, 4 or 5 guys. Last year we were talking about, Morikawa and Hovland and all the guys. And now we got a new batch, and it's like it just seems like every year they just keep replenishing with talent. So it's amazing. It was everything we could have asked for on a leaderboard. You had Cantlay, obviously, going to the playoffs. Scotty getting his first win, which I kind of seem to think that I was thinking about this today a little bit. Like might be a springboard for Scotty. I mean, we've seen him on the big stage at the Ryder Cup. We've seen him a few times at majors. This might be a springboard to kind of come out of his shell and maybe win 2-3 more times this year. So I'm excited to see what he does.
I think it's a good point, right? Like, and I also think that's kind of what the Ryder Cup. When we talked about how the Ryder Cup went for individual players, I think Scotty Scheffler may have benefited the most out of any player from what he was able to do on that Sunday to go kind of beat Rahm and beat him pretty soundly. I think that gives a guy the confidence that it takes to go head to head with Patrick Cantlay in the desert in a crazy environment. And I mean, that's really what it was. I mean, it was those two head to head. And of course, a bounce here or a bounce there changes the outcome of things. But it was also cool to see how we've been playing a lot of easy golf courses, right? It was cool to see the firm. It was cool to see the fast. It was the idea where bogey is it kind of in play. I think it's just more, intriguing golf in general. But yeah, to your point, good for Scotty. I know a lot of people were on him. I felt like it was kind of like a celebration for most of golf Twitter. I know that nobody kind of wanted to miss out on the the win that he actually had. But yeah, it's a cool golf tournament. And again, if you continue to see that, the overall field continue to get better and better and better, it's just going to do wonders for that event in general. And then we head into this week, which was probably the most popular, if not one of the 3 most popular event in golf course for the field, right? The players love coming to Riv. Of course, this is kind of like the 1-year anniversary of what happened with Tiger here last year. Luckily enough, he's back hosting again this week. And we have, I believe, the 10 of the top 10 players in the world in the field this week. So it's pretty much as good as it gets. And, I plugged at the beginning of the show kind of how great of a job you do with the course breakdown. And again, I suggest everybody to go try to check it out. It's a great way to start your week. But as far as this week, if you can, just kind of give us a breakdown of what to expect, what we're looking at as we kind of head up to LA or Pacific Palisades here for the Genesis.
Yeah, like you brought up, I mean, it's definitely one of my favorite tournaments of the year. I think a lot of people would kind of echo that. Obviously, Tiger hosting the tournament makes everybody excited. Obviously, we saw, something bad happen last year to him, which nobody wants to talk about. But yeah, I mean, this is an amazing golf course. And I think the thing that is fun for me, and I think you feel the same way, is that it's more of a major field. You're not going to have this crazy birdie fest where you're getting to 20 under or something like that. I mean, you're talking like 12 under-ish to win the golf tournament. So it's definitely going to be exciting to watch. There's 3 par 5s on this golf course that are all very easy. So that's where a lot of the scoring is going to come from. There are the par 4s. I think there's 7 par 4s between 450 and 500 yards. So that's another thing that I'm really keying on with my stats this week. It's tree-lined fairways, and they're pretty narrow, but the trees are a little bit off the fairway. So that's one thing to kind of look at. The only kind of X factor I think this week is the Kukua grass. I mean, obviously I don't have experience playing on it, but from everything you read about it, it's like it could be fine depending on where your golf ball lands, or it could have the ability to kind of grab your ball and kind of pull down when you swing. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously the rough probably won't be as thick as a major, but it is going to be thick, and there are going to be, some importance to hitting these fairways. So it'll be interesting. The greens are obviously crazy tough. They're a mix of POA and bent. They're average in size, but they're going to play super fast. They're multi-tiered. There's false fronts. They're undulating greens. I mean, it's going to be no joke. You're going to have a strong short game this week to win. Definitely.
Yeah, and to your point, the Kuya is weird. Having played in it somewhat, not only does kind of the ball sink to the bottom, but the grass itself kind of catches the club, right? And that's why you'll see kind of a bunch of silly shots around these greens. So with that being said, what kind of player do you think it's going to take this week in order to get it done? And again, with this golf course, to your point, with this field, it kind of feels like it's going to have the cream rise to the top. That's typically what we see with these kind of setups. Any specific, strokes gain data you're looking at, or what are you looking at from there?
So yesterday when I wrote my article, I was kind of going into it with targeting bombers. But then the more research I did, you don't necessarily have to be a bomber here. I mean, you can't lose strokes off the tee, obviously, and win here. But it's kind of a cop out. But it's just a really tough, golf course where you're just gonna have to be solid across the board. So I'm actually weighing strokes gain total a lot this week in my model, which I never do. I'm usually a lot more specific with what I do, but you just want a solid golfer. You're gonna have to have a good short game. You're gonna have to be decent off the tee. Tee to green is obviously super important, and you're kind of gonna have to putt your butt off this week to win. I mean, obviously putting is a variable. It's not very consistent all the time, but you're gonna have to have a good short game this week to win. So I'm gonna be focusing a lot, like I said, on par fours, 450 to 500, the par fives, the wedge play from 150 to 175, and then just hopefully I can catch lightning in a bottle with some guys. I don't know. I haven't decided really necessarily if I'm going to look for good short games or if I'm going to kind of try to catch lightning in a bottle. What are you going to do?
Yeah, so I think some of the points that you made, I'm kind of on board with, right? Like, this golf course isn't easy to hit the fairways. It's not necessarily easy to hit the greens. So I think, a lot of the time when we're kind of like thinking about what we want to use on a weekly basis, the around the greens kind of short game, to your point, is going to come into play here. And there's certain guys that excel at it because you're not going to be hitting a ton of greens. And not only when you're missing greens, the undulations and the different slopes in the green, make it difficult to get close to the flag. So not usually is something that we bake in, or at least me personally, is strokes gain or short game or around the green is not something that I use quite often, but I do think it's beneficial this week. And the other thing you said is, yes, the golf course is par 71. It's over 7,300 yards. So on the surface, it's a big ballpark. We know that typically every stop that we make on tour, it benefits the longer guy, just because if the rough's longer, they're hitting wedge. So there's always that benefit. But I do think it doesn't eliminate some of the field. Like, we play a lot of venues where you can kind of look at it and say, okay, this guy's just not long enough to play here. You can get around this golf course, and it's the perfect setup because, yeah, it's got beefy par fours, to your point, from 450 to 500, but then you roll around to number 10, which number 10 to me is probably one of the most intriguing holes on the tour stop all year. It's just a short par four with a ridiculous green, and there's really no right or wrong way to play it. But it will make guys look silly. And I think that's kind of what we're here for, especially after all these birdie fest. Let's play some real golf. And so, yeah, I'm very excited. And again, I think this is a golf course guys love to play, and that's why you see the field being what it is. So appreciate you with the info. And again, check him out. FanShare Sports retweets it. There's his Twitter handle right there. So you said every Sunday morning he gets out in front of it and gets to it early. Let's hop right into it, man. As far as DFS goes, we'll just kind of play with the board here, maybe pick out a couple guys or a guy you like in each kind of category, and let's just talk some golf. So starting up top, basically between Rahm and DJ. Rahm, shockingly, the most expensive golfer on the board. Is there 1-2 guys that you're kind of targeting up top, or how are you kind of looking at it from that perspective?
So it's kind of funny. I wanted to look at some course history on this course. And I mean, some of these guys, obviously, they're at the top for a reason, but you're looking at Rahm with amazing course history. Cantlay has really good course history. JT's has kind of been hit and miss. DJ has really good course history. Rory has good course history too. It's going to be one of these weeks where I don't know how wrong you can go with any of these top 4 or 5 guys. And one strategy that I like to do a lot is, not always, I'm not saying I do this in a week where it's kind of a weak field, but when it's a really hard field and guys come in way under-owned, like last week Cantlay was, which, yeah, Cantlay wasn't a great course fit. He'd been gaining a lot with his putter. He hadn't been kind of jumping off the page recently, but he finished second. So I like to kind of look at the ownership numbers at the top end and kind of play off of that, thinking, listen, if I can find one of these guys that happen to be 10% owned instead of being 20% owned, I don't know how I don't go to that. But I mean, you're seeing these guys right now with Cantlay and Rom, kind of rambling a little bit, but you're seeing these guys right now with just, I mean, every single week that they come out, it's a top 10 finish. It's like even on their back, Rom doesn't play that great. He still finishes T10. So I don't know how you stay away from Rom or Cantlay at this point. Which way are you going to go?
Yeah, so it's interesting because you made a good point. So, like, I think that if there's a week where we might be able to get some low ownership value at the top guys, it might be this week. Just because if you look kind of like the way I look at the board is I think people are really comfortable kind of starting their lineups with Xander, that Rory, that Victor Hovland range, right when we kind of get that price cut at 9K. And yeah, it's real easy to say, yeah, Rom and Cantlay. I mean, and I'm not here. We're not going to bore everybody with Stroh's game data because it's really damn good. And there's the reason why those guys are the price the way they are. But if you can look at it from the perspective, like, so JT, for example, when we talk about course history, the last 2 stops here, the course history has been great. However, last week we had a nice week out of JT. The ball striking numbers were fantastic. The guy that I am interested in at the top of the board here is going to be Dustin Johnson. It's just we haven't seen a lot of Dustin Johnson, right? And his course history here is fantastic. He has 3 straight top 10s. The guy gets it around. We know length's not an issue. He hasn't played since the Farmers, right? He had I think a 25th finish at the Farmers. And even before that, he had a bad year last year. And I think when we look at ownership percentages, he may be the forgotten guy up there. I would be very surprised if he wasn't. And then, so when we look at that, like, so then that cut comes to 9K. And this is where I think that the board starts to get extremely interesting for me. So, for example, Victor Hovland, who I love, hard not to love this week, right? And the reason that we talk about this kind of from a game theory perspective with DFS is Victor Hovland coming off the miscut in Phoenix. Victor Hovland doesn't miss 2 cuts in a row. What Victor Hovland, if you look at kind of his game, it fits around here extremely well outside of what we talked around the greens. However, you can kind of throw it out the window when it comes to Victor Hovland because he's that good of a ball striker. He hits that many greens. So in the 9K range for me to start out, I would take Victor Hovland, and I would also take Cam Smith. Cam Smith has also very, very good course history around here and just does everything well. And if you want to talk about a guy that can pitch and putt the golf ball, he's kind of at the top of the list. I have thoughts on kind of everybody in this range. So I'm interested to kind of see if there's a couple of guys you like and maybe is there a guy that you just don't like, right? Like, I mean, so this basically takes essentially from X all the way down to BK. Who do you kind of like in this section? And do you feel like with the names here, this is kind of where the build starts for a majority of people trying to get some salary relief from those top 10K guys?
Yeah, I think so. I think you brought up a good point earlier, starting with Xander or Rory maybe, or even Hovland, and kind of going down from there. I mean, these guys are all studs. I mean, these guys are guys that you could see easily being in the 10K. I like your Victor Hovland call a lot. He's probably my favorite guy in this range. I'm interested to see, I guess, what the ownership is this week on Hideki. I mean, we've seen him. He's 2 of 4 made cuts here, but the 2 made cuts are a T5 and a T9. So, I mean, like on paper, he doesn't have the short game, obviously, but he just seems like, I mean, he's a ball striker. It just seems like this course would fit him well. And if he's under owned, I mean, Hideki's kind of been not as much last week because of the course history, but I feel like he's a little bit underappreciated for how good he's been over the past year. So I'm definitely interested in him. I would probably, in terms of like who I would shy away from, I would probably shy away from the guys at the bottom, Spieth and Brooks. I'm not huge on either one of them as of right now. But who are your fades in this range?
So that's the name I wanted to bring up, right? Let's talk about Brooks real quick. Had a really good week last week, right? He kind of lost it with the driver on Sunday, which was one of the reasons he wasn't in contention. But for me, it's interesting because he does have great course history at the Waste Management. And this week, he has some good course history, but at 9K, I feel like the board's kind of begging you to bet BK as far as DFS goes. And he's probably the big name guy that you get the lowest ownership as of late because he's giving you reasons to kind of fade him. But if I were to pick one guy in this range, I would probably go with the Scotty Scheffler route. I get it. He won last week, and that's some of the reason why I would probably fade him. But yeah, to your point, Hideki, for example, and you made a good point about the last year. If you go back and look at the strokes gained data for an annual year, like what he's done has been fantastic. Now we know that everything's kind of predicated off the way that he putts the golf ball, and we're heading to a course where the greens are going to be tough. But I'm kind of with you on that as far as Hideki, but I think I would fade Scotty. But again, I could make a case to play everybody in the 9K range. I really could because it's just that good of a range. And that again, this allows you to kind of fade the top if you don't feel comfortable. But again, ownership wise, I feel like keep an eye on that. Use FanShare Sports and their projected ownership over the next couple days. And just kind of see there's going to be value. Who it is, I'm not sure. I would say it might be DJ. But damn, it seems like Patrick Cantlay is just ready to win one of these, right? He's just been right at the door the last few weeks, so I wouldn't be surprised with that either. Just kind of moving down the board, 8K range, kind of starting with Spieth, which I always have comments on Jordan Spieth, all the way down to who is it? Adam Scott. So yeah, that'd be all the way down to Taylor Gooch, which is another interesting name. Anybody in the 8K range that you're liking or you're kind of heavy on so far? And trust me, it's Monday, so there's lots of information to still be digested.
This range is loaded too. I mean, we keep saying it, every range, but it really is. I love at the top. I love Sam Burns, probably the best. I mean, pretty good course history here. He kind of always had this stigma until last year of he was great on easy courses. Like we would see him contend on these courses that were, birdie fest. He kind of isn't really that same golfer anymore. He's a really solid all-around golfer. So I like Burns a lot this week. Willie Z at the top, 8,800. I like him a lot this week. And then the other one is just Adam Scott. I mean, he doesn't really wow you all the time. I feel like his stats are good. Obviously, he has a win here. He has pretty good course history here too. But he's just exactly the kind of golfer I want to target this week. He's just a solid all-around golfer without many holes in his game. We obviously know he's a good ball striker, and I think Adam Scott's probably my favorite at the lower end. Who are you liking in this range?
All right. I think we're still alive. That's my bad. I think we have a kind of a storm rolling through. I think I momentarily lost power there, so I'm sure that's great for our audience. So again, I apologize. I think where were we at, Jason? We were in the AK range, my guy.
Well, talking about who you like in the AK.
So, all right. So I'll tell you. We'll take a look at AK real quick. And I apologize. I'm having some issues here with the power and the internet. So with the AK range, the first player that I am kind of being pulled to would be Sung J M. Do you have any Sung J M thoughts? I mean, again, if you want to strokes gain data, it's strokes gained everything. The guy does pretty much everything really well. And what I find very interesting, he's kind of an underrated. His short game's underrated. He's really good around the greens if you run the numbers. And I just think Paradise, it's perfect for him.
I thought about him too. So I was looking at him. He was one of the first names that I clicked on. The only thing that worries me here, I'm not huge on course history. I'd rather have recent form, to be honest with you, but like how bad he's been at this course in each of the two times. So he played here in 19 and 20, and he missed the cut both times and lost 5.6 strokes total. So that worries me a little bit with this course, especially in this range that is so good. I don't know if I'm going to play a lot of him, although I do tend to play him whenever he's in, on the board, but I like him, but I like going down a little bit. I like Adam Scott this week, and I like Fitzpatrick too. I just feel like their games are more tailored for this course.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick's an interesting one. Fitzpatrick seems to pop more when we kind of get to these venues that are a little bit more difficult, right? He's not kind of a guy that's going to go out and shoot 25, 30 under. And again, short game wise, he's pretty dang good outside of around the greens, but we know he's a good putter. His ball striking solid, 14 strokes gained off the tee. I like Matt Fitzpatrick a lot. So the guy that I wanted to talk about real quick is Tony Finau, right? And I think the reason I bring up Tony Finau is, one, I've seen his outright numbers incredibly high. And two, I think his ownership may be a little bit lower. Do you have any thoughts on Tony Finau? I know he's not in good form at all.
Yeah, I think you're going to be able to get him at a good discount. And this is the kind of course that we've seen. I mean, obviously he was second last year, but we've seen him at tougher courses really excel. And I don't know, I kind of always have this kind of reasoning with Tony Finau, and I do the same thing with Webb Simpson. Like, if they're under-owned, I feel like you almost got to play them. It's just kind of going back to like the game theory, like the higher upside guys with low ownership. I love playing them, but at the same time, Finau, and he's the same way as Webb, is like when they're chalk, that's when I jump off of them. So if Finau comes in single-digit owned, I don't know how you don't play him this week personally.
Yeah. What about Spieth, real quick? Just because I have to get a Spieth segment in every show, it's in my contract. Listen, I know that 2 weeks ago the ball striking is really, really good. Last week at the Waste Management, I think the first two rounds he hit it great. He couldn't make a putt. Then the swing lost him on Saturday and Sunday. I have a feeling that we might get the opportunity to play a lower own percentage of Jordan Spieth here in the 8K range. For me, if the ownership's low, if it's 12% or below, I think I'll be playing a hefty amount of Jordan Spieth this week. Again, it's a very volatile play. We know that, but do you have any thoughts? Are you going to consider playing Spieth? I mean, again, I think with that low, like with a low ownership with Jordan, it's hard to not play him based off of what you said, the upside, right?
Yeah. No, I have pretty much the same exact feelings. It's like 2 weeks ago, his ownership was so low and it looked like a slam dunk play in terms of that course. Now, last week, he, like you said it really well, that he hit the ball great the first two rounds. And then he came out over the weekend and kind of played like crap for the most part. I mean, he wasn't ever even in near contention last week. I don't know. This course worries me a little bit with him, just with how he is off the tee. I think you're going to have to be better off the tee than he is this week. Obviously, I don't know what his tournament history is here. I think he's done okay here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I mean, he has decent course history here. He has 2 top 15. So I'm not jumping out of my socks to play him this week, but I feel like if he's low owned, he's one of those guys that like his upside is as high as anyone's in this tournament. So if he's single digit owned or 10% owned, I think I play him for sure. But that's more of an ownership call.
Yeah, I'm with you. It for me, like I'm a huge Jordan Spieth guy. I try to keep it 100%. Like, look, I've been off Spieth for quite a while, right? And so like I don't want to just say, hey, I want to play Jordan Spieth. I want to play Jordan Spieth. I do think that if potential ownership, there could be some value there. I'm not saying go break the bank for Jordan Spieth. If you look at our friends over at Fantasy National or FanShare, it's going to show you that the data is not trending necessarily in the correct direction.
Right.
Oh, anybody else in 8K that you got your eyes on? If not, no big deal. We can slide to the 7K. I actually do want to bring up Bubba Watson. Left-handed players have had the tendency to play well around here. Is Bubba a guy you're looking at all? I do have a feeling Bubba, based off the narrative that I just brought forth, will be somewhat highly owned and having a good week at Waste Management.
His course history is so weird here. I mean, he's got 2 missed cuts in a row, a 15, a win, and a WD. It's like, I don't know. It's tough for me. Like you said, the left-handed golfers do play well here, and I like Bubba, especially if he's lower owned. I definitely like Bubba. One guy I wanted to ask you about, and shout out to our boy Rob, who's not on tonight, the Gucci man, down at 8,000. I mean, really good course history here. Playing okay, kind of tailed off a little bit, but what do you think about Taylor Gooch this week?
Yeah, so this morning when the outright board came up, just the betting board in general, I threw money on his outright. I think his outright's 55-1. The thing with Gooch is, and I think he's become a popular player DFS wise, if we've seen kind of the way things have trended over time. Yeah. If Gooch is somewhat low owned, I'm in. Now, the concern I have is he had a really nice week last week outside of Sunday. So what are those ownership numbers kind of going to be? Recency bias when we look at these things. People are off of people quickly, which is why I think we could potentially get Victor Hovland and get some kind of a lower owned Victor Hovland, which would be great for everybody. But I kind of have the same feeling with him, right? He's right at the 8K range. I mean, between Mark Leishman, Fitzpatrick, I would probably lean to Gooch. But again, you got to keep an eye on those ownership percentage, because if he skyrockets out of control, how do you pivot from there, right? Are you pivoting elsewhere? Yeah. Are you trying to go with a super low-owned guy? Do you feel that confident in Gooch? So I would feel confident playing him. I have no doubt that he'll make the cut, and I bet him already outright. I believe it, again, 55-1, which is a hefty number on Taylor Gooch for the way he's been playing. But he's one of those I feel like you have to watch the ownership percentage even more than most players. But there's no reason he can't play well here based off of what he does well, which is pretty much everything as far as hitting the ball or ball striking is concerned.
Yeah. I don't know if it's Rob. I don't know if it's Rob just loving Gooch and his influence on the whole industry or something, but like you said, he's just so highly owned every week. Like, I love playing him, but like if I see him at 18-20% owned, it's tough. I mean, especially in that range where Fitz is right by him. Leishman, he's even a decent play, so it's tough. But yeah, I like Gooch a lot this week too, but I just worry about his ownership too.
Yeah, no, it's tough. That's one of the guys that I think on a week-to-week basis you definitely have to take a look at. And just I guess we'll hit on the 7 and 6K range here real quick. 7K's got a lot of options. I guess the first thing that I'll ask you before we get into players, are you going to consider and talk about a guy that I think is going to be super high owned? It would be Tigala at 7,300. Yeah. Are you going to go back to the well? Do you think maybe we'll take a little time off for him to cool off, or where are you at with him?
I love Tigala. I'm a little bit sad for him. Obviously, the leaderboard was great. I had a Scotty ticket, so I was happy too. But I don't know. I just felt bad for him. He's a guy that I've loved to play early in his young career. I mean, he's not fussed by the moment at all. He just seems like he is just like a strong-minded. I mean, he's a stud golfer, and I like him a lot. I could see his ownership being super high this week. That price is too low for him. So I don't know. I'd probably wait and see on his ownership a little bit, but I feel like the top part of this range is absolutely loaded. Like, I like Answer a lot. Paul Casey. Paul Casey's price was one of the first ones that kind of jumped out at me as being too low. We haven't seen Paul Casey in a long time, obviously on the PGA Tour, but I mean, he has pretty decent course history here. I like him a lot. The other name that pops out to me a lot is Alexander Noren. Just a solid golfer. It's like one of those guys that he doesn't wow you. His stats never really wow you. He has good course history here, but he's just solid across the board. I mean, decent short game. It seems like he used to do really well on these really tough courses. So I don't know. I like him a lot this week too, but I feel like there's a lot of ways you can go in this range. Who stands out to you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I do like Mark Leishman. I know he's at the top end of it. Answer I like a lot too. And I think that we'll although Answer is mispriced, I think being in the 7K range, I also think people will stray away from just based off the narrative that this is somewhat of a longer, bigger ballpark, right? And people are under the impression that Abraham Answer can't hang a golf course where the par fours are considerably long, 450 to 500. I do like Abraham Answer a lot. The guy that I wanted to talk about is Patrick Reed. Now, I'm not saying whether I'm in or not on Patrick Reed at this point, but like Patrick Reed at 7,400, and I don't know if you've seen the odds board, but you can get him as high as 90 to 1. You talk about an upside guy. I mean, listen, he's played like shit. Like, I get it. Like, right? And there's probably a reason he's here. But, man, something about looking at this where he's the same price as Thomas Peters and Luke List. It's like, man, I might have to play him here.
So I fell victim to this trap twice recently for the same exact reasons. Oh, my God, he's going to be 6% owned. Oh, he's $8,000. How do I do this? It's burned me both times. But for the exact points that you said, I mean, like, the stats are great. Strokes gained data is great. The course history is great. But it's like sometimes you just got to base it off of, like, whose price stands out. And that's one of the first prices, too. Him and Casey were the two that I was like, wow, look at how low they are. I mean, this is a Masters champion that we're talking about, a guy that this is a course that when Patrick Reed's playing well, this course would fit him perfectly. I mean, he's got a good short game. He's solid across the board. It would fit him perfectly, but he has been god awful. So I can't commit to saying yes, I'm going to play him, but I'm not opposed to it. I don't think I like taking chances like that in this range.
Yeah, no, I'm with you because, like, again, like we talk about win equity and whatnot, and he certainly has it. And I think recency bias puts him into a place where even at 7,400, I think people are terrified to play Patrick Reed, and they should be, right? Like, this is one of those. And again, I didn't bite on the 90 to 1 number on the outright market at this point. I still may. I just think that maybe Patrick Reed at this range could be a good GPP play with the upside, with the low ownership, and also the ability just to kind of build a roster around him there at 7,400. Maverick McNeely's also interested to me. I mean, Maverick McNeely 3 weeks ago was the darling, right, at Pebble Beach. Like, his ownership was out of control. It was like 23%. And he didn't have a good week. I think this might be a better week to get on Maverick McNeely. I don't know if you have any thoughts on Mav. If you don't, it's all good. I am also kind of looking at Adam Hadwin based off recent form. He's played well. I don't know if there's anybody else in the 7K range that you wanted to hit on. I do want to hit on Corey Connors. What happened to Corey Connors? Corey Connors has like, I mean, again, talk about a guy that's a fantastic ball striker. He's just not been good recently. And I just don't know. And yeah, you could say that there's maybe that upside there, but man, it's kind of Patrick Reed and Corey Connors are sitting right there, but not next to each other. Right. And it's like they're kind of have the similar problems going on right now. But for me, I would tend to trust Patrick Reed more, being a major champion and his resume on tour. But yeah, Corey Connors has kind of seemed to fall off a cliff here, and hopefully he gets it back together.
Yeah, he's along the same lines. I've been thinking about him the past few weeks of like, man, his price is low, his ownership is low, but he, like you said, I mean, like the things that he normally does well, his ball striking just hasn't been as good. He looks lost right now on the course, so I'm probably going to stay away from Connors for sure. I would lean towards Reed out of those guys too. Lonto at 7,200 kind of intrigues me a little bit. I feel like he went from being like last year's darling a little bit that everybody played, kind of like Taylor Gooch's, to kind of, forgotten. I mean, he has a 37 and a 26 here. I mean, he's just a solid all the way around the course golfer. He's not going to wow you with the stats. He's not going to wow you, all the time. Can he win? Probably not. But I feel like at 7,200, he's a cut maker. And I mean, he's got decent upside. I don't know if it's winning upside, but he's got decent upside.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. And again, like when we're playing DFS, like these guys don't have to win, right? A top 20, a top 10 would be lovely, especially at low ownership. I know Ryan earlier mentioned Molinari. Listen, for me, he's right at 7K. My thoughts on Molinari before we kind of hit on the sickos, if you have any. I like the way that Molinari's been trending, right? His game's been better. Now, one guy that we talked about kind of fading guys out of bigger ballparks. I do worry about the size of the ballpark here from Molinari at Riv. That's one of the reasons I'd be weary of it. But again, you're going to get a low ownership on Molinari, so he may be worth a flyer. Do you got anything on Molinari? You kind of feeling the same?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. Molinari is like one of these guys that I keep wanting to play every single week, and I never pull the trigger. I mean, his game is – we're seeing him kind of round back into form a little bit. So, yeah, I don't hate that play at all. He's one of those guys that I hope starts to play better. I just like him as a golfer. So
yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. So before we get out of here, and sorry again, everybody, for whatever's happening in my home. Anybody that you like in the 6K range? I mean, there's actually some interesting names. Like Ricky at 6,600. Yeah, trust me, Drew. Yeah, we know that Ricky's played terrible. I also think it's interesting to see Charlie Hoffman. The dude says one thing about the PGA, and he's dropped to 6,600. Those two guys stand out to me. To be honest with you, right there at 6,600. I mean, for Charlie Hoffman made the cut and had a decent week last week outside of what happened there on Sunday. But at 6,600, it's like, damn, man, is Ricky really falling to 6,600 now? It's like, I kind of starting to feel bad a little bit. Would you play Ricky at all? You don't even have to give me reasoning because I'm not sure you can find any. But I just don't know if I could do it, man.
T20 last year. That's one reason to play him. No, I don't know. I mean, 6,600. We're talking about just ridiculous territory at this point. We're not talking about 7,600. We're talking 6,600 at this point. So yeah, I don't hate it. Those were the two first names that jumped out at me too. There's a few guys that have really good course history down in the sixes, which is what I tend to look for usually. James Hahn at 6,500 has amazing course history. Patrick Rogers at 6,500 has really good course history too. If I was going to go with one of them, it would probably be Rogers. Another one that has a really good course history is Wyndham Clark too, which you would not think based on his game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Patrick Rogers is probably my favorite.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't have a ton here at the 6K range. I will say that there's some names like Aaron Rye, for example, who I don't want to say you personally, but we've been on to an extent, the golf community. And now he's all of a sudden at 6,400. Taylor Pendrith we have Bo Hostler, who was in contention. I honestly think the way that the board sets up, there's not a lot of need to go this low down it. If you're doing a max build and you want to throw a 2% on one of these guys, then have at it. But again, I just don't know if you need to go this low. But if you do want to go this low, or you want to play a top heavy lineup, there is value here. You just got to find it. I mean, JT Poston's been playing well. Matthew Neesmith always breaks models. Again, I'm not going to go through everybody, but I think there's more value this week, and you might be able to find it. Again, all you need is kind of a guy to make the cut, top 25 here, and then kind of build from there. So any other comments, anything else you wanted to go over before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited for this week. We've had some fun tournaments, I feel like, so far this year, and it just seems like golf in general is just in such a good spot. It's like it's almost like every week is an exciting tournament now. You don't see any like runaways anymore, and I feel like this is going to be another one. I'm excited to see a major field this week, for sure.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. Like, that's the reason I feel like getting to 3 wins in today's tour, like a 3-year season, is a really impressive season. I just don't see like guys winning 5, 6, 7 times in a year anymore. There's just so much parity and so much youth, and just again, the game is in a wonderful spot. So, Jason, I appreciate you again for coming on with me. Thank you for dealing with my power issues here at the home. And again, Jason Sullivan, find him Fairway to Heaven podcast. Also Sunday mornings, he'll post his course preview through FanShare Sports as well. Jason, I appreciate you coming on with me. Good luck to everybody this week. And again, fun week, great field, great golf course. So everybody enjoy themselves, and let's make some cash.